United States. So we're going to continue where we are here with Al-Aqsa, and we'll be right back.
Anti-Semitism.
So I played a clip from The Hill. I played a clip from The Hill yesterday. It's hosted by Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave. The original hosts of The Hill were Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty. They now host a show called Breaking Points, which they were on Rogan promoting Breaking Points recently. And I'll let them explain what happened.
Anti-Semitism. In the course of that discussion. Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying our State of the Union content that we brought everybody yesterday. However, there is another major event that bears addressing on behalf of the Breaking Points community. You might have noticed we were on the Joe Rogan Experience, and Joe actually brought up what happened with Ilhan Omar, her removal from the House Foreign Affairs Committee over alleged anti-Semitism. In the course of that discussion, he made a joke which is, let's just say, not being well received. We are going to play the full context for all of you and then break down the ensuing controversy that has embroiled all of us here at Breaking Points. Let's take a listen to the clip first.
I just saw,
And my question is the level of humor. Is the level of humor directly or inversely, maybe indirectly proportionate to the pushback? Like the funnier it is, the less people will be offended by it. Is that the way it works? Does it matter if it's a joke or not? Tap dancing Sagar and Jetty seems to think it is.
Nancy Pelosi is endorsing Adam Schiff for California Senate. When you read through the way that man lied to the American public through all of Russiagate, you're like,
yeah,
he should be like in prison for perjury, not being bolstered by one of the most powerful women in the country for the United States Senate.
Sitting next to Ilhan Omar, where she's apologizing for talking about it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah,
which is just about money. She's talking about money.
She shouldn't have apologized.
I'll go ahead and
say
that's not an anti-Semitic statement. I don't think that is. It's about Benjamins or money. You know, the idea that Jewish people are not into money is ridiculous.
Listen.
That's like saying Italians aren't into pizza. It's fucking stupid.
Listen.
It's fucking stupid.
I understand that the way she phrased it, like she could have phrased it a different way so that people would have less of a freak out. But can you not?
Why? And for what? It was a double entendre as well, which makes it even better. It was an early Netanyahu. People want the hot takes. This is hotter than I'm comfortable with, but I think it's true. All About the Benjamins was early trolling, pre-Netanyahu.
Talk about the influence of money in D.C.
Of course.
This is very obvious. There's a very obvious reason why for my entire life there's been a uniparty consensus around our policy vis-a-vis.
Yeah, it's all about the Benjamins. It's all about the Benjamins. It's all about Benjamin as well. He's back in office, actually.
v. the Israeli government and a total inability or unwillingness to criticize the Israeli government. It has everything to do with organization and, yes, money, just like every other fucking interest in D.C. And so, yeah, the fact that she said that and she got kicked off the Foreign Affairs Committee, look, I have issues and disagreements with Ilhan Omar, but she actually is one of the more courageous voices on foreign policy who's willing to call out some of the hypocrisy and bullshit in U.S. foreign policy. Extremely rare in terms of United States congressmen. So it's actually kind of a real loss that she got kicked off that committee.
Yeah, she, whether you agree with her or not, she has a bold opinion, and that opinion is not.
Well, guess what, Crystal Ball? You agree with her. You know what you sound like to them. No. Closer. Definitely as powerful as it should be. Let's try one last one.
Oh, there it is. Woo! Not her own. There's many people that have that opinion, and
Right.
they should be represented.
Totally
My
agree.
point is, she's sitting right next to Adam Schiff, and no one says shit. You know, she doesn't say, yeah, I probably should have said, hey, motherfucker, what did you say?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
You said
Amen.
some crazy shit that wasn't true at
Yeah.
all.
No.
Okay, so that's the clip. Now you have it in its full glory. You can decide for yourself whether he was being anti-Semitic or not. However, many people have decided to use a bad faith view of what happened there and accuse not only Joe Rogan, however, Crystal and I as well as somehow being anti-Semitic. So let me go ahead and read this tweet from Representative Josh Gottheimer, Democratic congressman best known for trying to save the millionaire SALT deduction. He says, quote, "It is despicable language like this that leads to attacks and threats against Jewish people. Joe Rogan has a massive platform. It's infuriating to watch him and Crystal Ball promote blatant, dangerous anti-Semitic tropes, including those masquerading as anti-Israel sentiments." So,
Boo.
Crystal, I just want to throw it to you for your reaction. Because not only Gottheimer, but the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, is now condemning Joe Rogan. They're condemning us. We have multiple pro-Israel groups calling us
Your
somehow
inconsistencies are
anti-Semitic.
glaringly obvious. Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious.
For talking about the role of money in politics and the way that lobbying works. So what was your reaction to all of this nonsense?
I mean, first of all, I went back and thought through, our time with Joe and like that particular moment. And to the extent that I really thought about what he said that deeply at all, it was sort of like, oh, it's a off-color, like women be shopping level of joke. And so then
Exactly.
I went on to make the points that I think are really important, that I 100% stand by, which is that it's not anti-Semitic to talk about the influence of money in politics with regards to any topic, and even when it comes to the topic of our government's relationship with Israel and Israeli government policy.
And what about the topic of AIPAC? Because that was the context, as we'll see.
I think it is nonsense that Ilhan Omar got taken off of a committee because of her comments. I don't think anything she said was anti-Semitic. I don't think there was anything wrong with what she said. And I think we have to be able to be honest about the way money works in D.C. without just casually throwing around these very harmful and damaging and ugly labels. So, Gottheimer's tweet, I don't even really 100% understand what he's saying there about masquerading as anti-Israel or something like that. I'm not even clear on what he means by that, but I can tell you personally, I 1000% stand by the comments that I made and my view of the situation with Ilhan Omar, and I would say it again any day of the week.
Yes, and that's a great point. As if being anti-Israel needs masquerading. There are people who are anti-countries. That a lot of people are pro that same country. But if they're anti and their reasoning, their logic,
The whole notion of logic.
for being anti that country is valid. If it's legitimate, it's legitimate. You know, you don't look. Some people feel like they need to masquerade in certain places in support of certain things. But you have to ask yourself, why would anyone need to feel like they have to masquerade in support of it?
You have nothing to apologize for. For all of the people who are out there saying, how dare you? Why didn't you confront him? First of all, he's a comedian and he was making a joke. Now, I'm not going to say it was the most artfully phrased joke or whatever in the world. And, you know, if he wants to clean it up, that's on him. Number two, we were having...
Sagar is the most backpedaling, the most, like, neurotic, like, I don't even know. I'm not going to name call too much, but his level of inconsistency.
Your inconsistencies are glaringly obvious.
having a substantive discussion around the removal of a United States congressman around allegations that she made that influence of money in politics, something that we all seem to agree affects every platform on earth, but we're not allowed to discuss it here. As people can probably tell, I'm really upset because I'm not going to just sit here and let people smear you and Joe Rogan as anti-Semitic. We've got every pro-Israel group and all these congressmen on the planet denouncing us as somehow, like, what is it, anti-Semitic by allyship or some bullshit like that, because we sat by and didn't immediately call him out. Now, once again, I don't think that it was the best phrased joke. At the same time, like, who are you? What, you're the editor now? And, even then, take a step back. Do you believe Joe Rogan is an anti-Semite? I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. Do I believe, Crystal, that you were being anti-Semitic whenever you were talking about, the influence of money in politics and how that relates to Israel? No. It's complete and utter nonsense. And this is how they smear people who want to talk about this.
What is this nothing you talk about? 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 What is this nothing you talk about?
Really, honestly, outraged by this entire thing and the way that people have reacted to it in the broader establishment. And here's the worst part, as you and I know, Crystal. How many people will watch the full episode in a full context, in the full clip?
And I don't know why you're surprised. Ilhan Omar isn't surprised. The political culture that they're a part of, and I don't just mean within one border, but that political culture has been running rampant, raping, pillaging with no consequences, choosing their proverbial target, defaming that target, and then destroying it and robbing the target.
How many people will dismiss what you said about that substantive point because of the joke that preceded it? And just so much of this is just completely ridiculous. But they got the headlines that they wanted. They got the headlines that they wanted. Breaking Points is anti-Semitic. Joe Rogan is anti-Semitic. And a lot of people aren't gonna look past this. That's actually what's the most disgusting part of it all.
There's a whole outrage industrial complex. And so the fact that, he makes this like offhanded, off-color joke and that we don't immediately jump, how dare you, Joe Rogan, and jump
right
on our high horse, but instead use it as a moment to talk about the legitimate criticism of DC and the way that money in politics works. Listen, honestly, I don't let it bother me that much because I think these people are bad faith. I think they're just looking for a way to take shots. I don't think they really are like deeply offended or morally outraged or like, people were saying, oh, this is so dangerous. Come on. I mean, it was a State of the Union last night. There are so many larger issues at stake than one off-color joke made by Joe Rogan and how we responded to it in the moment in, our 1 hour and 30 minutes into a 3-hour plus podcast. So listen, it is what it is. Like I said, for me personally, the direction I steered the conversation in, the comments I made about Ilhan Omar, about the way DC works, about what you're allowed to say, what you're not allowed to say, I stand by it. I'd say it again. I just said it today, and I don't think there is anything remotely anti-Semitic about talking about the influence of money in politics, and it is absolute bullshit that Ilhan Omar was pulled off of a committee because she was honest about such influence.
Actually, we didn't even get a talk to comment about that substantively. I think what happened is totally ridiculous. I mean, especially, you're actually playing into the trope that you're not allowed to talk about it by removing them from the committee. And actually, that's what this entire thing has revealed to me, which is that you are what? Are we not allowed to have that discussion? Now, I deplore anti-Semitism. I think it's terrible, but conflate.
Are you asking permission? We have the evidence. No one can refute the evidence.
Criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism is freaking ridiculous. And, even to come back to what Rogan was talking about, as you said, he was making, as I understand it, and as I understood it in the moment, it was one of those things where, everybody likes money. Now, look, I wouldn't have phrased it the way that he said, but also, who are you? You're going to, sit in the room with us while we're all laughing or whatever, having a good time, and being the editor of all of this, and then having your faux outrage. I've seen a lot of so-called free speech warriors, Crystal, people who believe in free speech. Oh, this is so terrible, pushing this, cancellation campaign. They're like, we got to get right-wingers to stand up or whatever against Joe Rogan. These people are all complete frauds. In my estimation, they're jealous of him. They're jealous of the fact that they don't have as big of a platform, and they are the ones proving the trope that we're not allowed to have this discussion without being called anti-Semitic. And that is why I remain outraged by watching people supposedly, Crystal on the side or whatever, of the free speech come out and denounce us and denounce Joe. They're full of shit. Let's be honest.
This is always the issue where it really comes down to it. I mean, I've said this for a long time. The issue you're most likely to get canceled on is supporting Palestine, criticizing Israel, and that's listen, I care about free speech for the principle of it, not because of which side it happens to help or hurt in the moment, but...
And speaking about this in a logic fashion, right?
Of logic.
If that is the case, how do we make speech as free as it possibly can be? We eliminate that. We say that is not conducive to free speech, and that needs to be attacked. And so that needs to be the pivot point. Are you for free speech? Are you for free speech? Oh, yes, I'm for free speech. Do you support Palestine? If you support Palestine, you're for free speech, especially in the United States. This is the deciding issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy that's kind of exposed by this moment. Listen, again, off-color, offhand joke made by a comedian in the middle of a 3-hour podcast. Is this really what we're going to the mat over? I just feel like there are so many more important things for people to actually care about and get outraged about. And back to Mr.
They sound like they're pivoting.
Gottheimer, by the way, one of those things perhaps people should be outraged about is this is one of the most corrupt members of Congress. As you said, Sagar, he's the guy pushing for the millionaire SALT tax break, and one of the top funded congressmen from the private equity industry that he has gone and carried water for. And guess what? I think we should be able to talk about that, and I don't think that it's anti-Semitic to do so. Yeah, he's the one who calls himself Mr. Salt. His entire thing is bringing back a tax deduction which disproportionately helps millionaires and multimillionaires, specifically in California and New York. And he has the gall to come after you, to come after Rogan, for talking
about also, somehow making this into an anti-Semitic thing. So, anyways, I thought we owed people a reaction to it. As people can say, I'm pretty hopped up about this entire thing, and yeah, I don't know. I'm often reminded of like just how disgusting and how disgusting and inconsistent so many people claim to be whenever it comes to free speech. And secondary, on the mainstream media,
Your
you got to go look.
Are glaringly obvious.
Headline, Variety, Mediaite, all these other people, they're like, rubbing their hands together, relishing this complete BS controversy because they have it out for Joe. Joe is going to be fine, all right, it'll be fine. We will be fine here over at Breaking Points, but that's not the point. You can't just call people anti-Semitic. You can't just throw these things out there and try and spin it into a whole thing in the service of your agenda. And we are not going to apologize, I can tell you that right now, for all the people who have reached out and said, oh, you guys got to put your distance between yourselves and Joe. Yeah, I'll save my most vulgar language for my response to that.
The last thing that I'll say about all of this is you can go back and look at our record of, how we've talked about these issues many, many times on Breaking Points, about our, full-throated condemnation of real anti-Semitism.
On the mainstream
media,
and
that actually was a little
every
based.
Headline, Variety.
That actually was a little bit righteous to be like, and we're not going to apologize.
Mediaite, all these other people, they're like, rubbing their hands together, relishing this complete BS controversy because they have it out for Joe. Joe is going to be fine, all right, it'll be fine. We will be fine here over at Breaking Points, but that's not the point. You can't just call people anti-Semitic. You can't just throw these things out there and try and spin it into a whole thing in the service of your agenda. And we are not going to apologize, I can tell you that right now, for all the people who have reached out and said, oh, you guys got to put your distance between yourselves and Joe. Yeah, I also... About all of this is you can go back and look at our record of, how we've talked about these issues many, many times on Breaking Points, about our, full-throated condemnation of real anti-Semitism, like what was on display with Kanye West. I mean, the record is clear. So if you're super outraged...
Threw Kanye under the bus as well. Yeah, and here's Ben Shapiro's take on it, which is honest, forthright.
So my friend Joe Rogan yesterday, or a couple of days ago, he had on Sagar Enjeti and Crystal Ball. They are the hosts of Breaking Points, which is a political podcast, which is fun listen. It's interesting, worth to listen. Crystal Ball was doing a full-scale defense of Ilhan Omar being a raging Jew hater. And Joe Rogan...
What? Oh, man. I'm enjoying this so much.
Crystal Ball was doing a full-scale...
That's not full speed. What is this fast talker?
Crystal Ball was doing a full-scale defense of Ilhan Omar being a raging Jew hater. And Joe Rogan, being Joe, was riffing. And as he was riffing, he just sort of dumped out a idea about Jews that is, at the very least, not good. Because I'm friends with Joe, I'm going to chalk this up to Joe just riffing. There are a couple of ways to...
Yeah, and I mean, we can look at it again, but, it's pretty simple. It was only like a 30 seconds or so. He said Jews. He said Jews, so that means he was comparing Jews. Now, was he mistaken? Because Omar was not comparing Jews. Omar was not mentioning Jews.
Interpret what he is saying right here. Suffice it to say that the meme that Jews are into money, like disproportionately into money, like Jews love the money, that is anti-Semitic. Okay, if you say Jews love money more than other people love money, I'm going to need some evidence on that score, number one. Number two, it is, in fact, an anti-Jewish statement to suggest that Jews have a particular love for the mullah because they are corrupt or terrible or whatever. That all ties into... So, here was the bit that went viral yesterday from Joe's show.
next to Ilhan Omar, where she's apologizing for talking about it's all about the Benjamins.
Yeah.
Which is just about money. She's talking about
she
money.
shouldn't have apologized.
That
I mean,
was
I'll go
not,
ahead and
that's not
say
an
it.
anti-Semitic statement. I don't think that is. It's about Benjamins or money. You know, the idea that Jewish people are not into money is ridiculous.
Listen.
That's like saying Italians aren't into pizza. It's stupid.
Listen.
Okay, so there are a couple ways to read that, right? One is the anti-Semitic way, which is Jews are disproportionately into money, right? And the Italians are into pizza, like Italians are disproportionately into pizza, Jews are into money, or Italians invented pizza, Jews invented money. Like the Jews are in control of world finance. That's one way to read it.
He always takes it way too far. He just like, and you know, I know it's tongue in cheek, but what are you going to do this every day that you're on? You're going to be tongue in cheek and over the top, 7 to 10 times, wherein your speech could be speaking these things into existence. It's like, they made up money. What are you talking about, bro?
Read it. The other way to read that is that what he is saying is that Jews like money like everybody else likes money. Italians like pizza like everybody else likes pizza. Okay, that is one way to read it. I'll leave it up to you which one you think is more accurate. However, to pretend that that's actually what Ilhan Omar was saying is not true, okay? Ilhan Omar, when she said it's all about the Benjamins, she was specifically referring to American support for Israel, and the suggestion was that AIPAC was paying members of Congress using Jew money in order to get people to support Israel.
That was good up until the using Jew money part, because everybody that's in AIPAC is not Jewish. In fact, AIPAC is Israeli. Right? The I in AIPAC is for Israel.
That was the suggestion from the All About the Benjamins tweet. Okay, so this obviously has gone viral. I know Joe well. Joe's not an anti-Semite. That statement is not good. And, I assume that if I called Joe up, he would say that he meant the second thing, not the first thing. That's what I will assume from that, because again, I know Joe. Okay, other things that I hate. So, there's been this story about a Twitch star who apparently...
This is too quick of a pivot. Let's look at an article. This is an article from Middle East Eye. It's entitled Ilhan Omar's Benjamin's Tweet Storm Criticizing AIPAC is Not Anti-Semitic. This is an older article. I think it came out around the time that this controversy was stirred up. And so I think it's important to think about it contextually here. A volley of criticism and rage followed Omar's tweet dominating social media platforms and U.S. mainstream media. It was only a matter of time before the gloves came off. Following the election of Somali-American Ilhan Omar and Palestinian-American Rashida Tlaib into the U.S. Congress in November, the arrival of these two Muslim women in Washington has seen them closely scrutinized by opponents and critics over their willingness to challenge the political consensus. When Omar wrote in a tweet on Sunday night that the members of the U.S. government were being influenced by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, these PACs, I think we may have to rekindle some Citizens United exposés. To support the state of Israel, a volley of criticism and outrage followed, dominating social media platforms and U.S. media on Monday. Pro-Israel advocates and politicians from both the Republican and Democratic parties accused Omar of anti-Semitism, arguing that her comments alluded to an age-old caricature of Jewish money and Jewish control of governments that's been used as means to persecute and demonize Jews. That was Jews 3 times in that and never in Omar's statement. But others say the accusations are aimed at Omar's pro-Palestinian political stance. That probably makes more sense. Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib's presence disrupts the status quo of bipartisan, uncritical support of Israel. I think what's happened is emblematic of a number of things. One's just an explicit establishment response to Muslims, or to a Muslim in Congress who is critical of Israel. Nora Erekat, a human rights lawyer and academic based at Virginia's George Mason University, says Ilhan Omar's and Rashida Tlaib's presence disrupts the status quo of bipartisan, uncritical support of Israel, Erekat told MEE, Middle East Eye. Roe kicks off. Let's start from the beginning. On Sunday, The Intercept's journalist Glenn Greenwald criticized Kevin McCarthy, a Republican politician, for threatening to punish Tlaib and Omar for previous anti-Israel remarks. Omar tweeted Greenwald with a comment, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby." Omar's reference to Benjamin paid homage to mid-90s rap song of the same name, in which the play on the name Benjamin referred to money. The $100 note has the face of one of America's founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. Batya Ungu Sargon, opinion editor of Forward, replied to Omar asking who she thought was paying American politicians to be Israel, though I think I can guess. The supporters of Israel? But Batya, and I slowed down, and I'm going to take note of this, because Batya Ungar Sargon, I noticed her name from being the substitution host at The Hill at this point. Yeah, so I'll definitely make that connection the next time that I see her substituting. And Omar replied, AIPAC. Yeah, that's right. Who's paying American politicians to be pro-Israel? Who is it? It's AIPAC. Supporters of AIPAC. It's like, because that's not logical. You know, it's like that's one of those like gotchas that don't really get you, if you know what I mean. That's not really a valid point. Unfortunate choice of words. Yonah Lieberman is a spokesperson, if not now, a Jewish movement that focuses on urging Jewish Americans to withdraw support for Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory, told MEE that it was an unfortunate choice of words. I think it's possible to simultaneously recognize that AIPAC uses traditional lobbying tactics, including raising money for politicians so that they don't question Israeli policy, while also recognizing that Ilhan Omar had an unfortunate word choice. What? That played to anti-Semitic stereotypes. I'd like to hear these. Maybe so. Semitic stereotypes about Jewish money controlling politicians, said Lieberman. I don't think that Omar is anti-Semitic, and she's apologized, which is courageous in itself, but she could have made that same point, that AIPAC has undue influence over American policy without playing into those tropes. It is about the money, though. It's a PAC. AIPAC formed in 1951 by Jewish American leaders. Is it true that, and again, this is, I'm not going to ask permission. It's not true that no one can talk about the money, the way money moves with certain people. Everyone is allowed to do that. And just because there is a trope, a stereotype that's put upon a people, either by themselves or by others, just because that exists doesn't mean you can't hold that person accountable for the very thing that trope addresses. As an organization that focuses on pushing through, I got to get this right, for that very trope that it addresses. As an organization that focuses on pushing through specific Israel-friendly bills and sponsoring government visits to Israel, it manages to wield tremendous influence over U.S. politicians. AIPAC itself says that the United States Congress has provided Israel with the strongest support of any institution in the world. In 2018, it spent $3.5 million on lobbying alone. But AIPAC is in no way the only pro-Israel organization lobbying government, nor is it the biggest contributor to the U.S. political establishment. According to Quartz, the Adelson family, with Eastern European Jewish ancestry, dwarfs AIPAC's numbers, with a $118 million contribution to the Republican Party in the 2018 midterms alone. The Adelsons are also said to have been influential in U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a move that was applauded by AIPAC. Stigmatize our community. Responding to Omar's comments about AIPAC, the pro-Israel lobby group J Street PAC said, "There's no doubt that money often plays a major role in our political system. Elected officials must be extremely aware that tropes about Jewish money and political influence have been used for centuries to target and stigmatize our community. I don't think Omar is an anti-Semitic, and she's apologized, which is courageous in itself, but she could have made that same point, that AIPAC has undue influence over American policy without playing." So the reason why they have influence is because of the money that they have. So you can talk about, I don't think it's sensical or it's sensible to talk about only their influence and not the reason why they have the influence. This kind of rhetoric and imagery has never been the exclusive province of left or right, and both Democrats and Republicans should be hypervigilant to ensure that it has no place in our political discourse. J Street PAC, an organization that describes itself as a political home for pro-Israel, pro-peace Americans, said. But Rebecca Wilkerson, executive director of Jewish Voices for Peace, an organization that opposes anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim and anti-Arab bigotry and oppression, told MEE that it's not anti-Semitic to say that a lobby group is using money to influence politics. Wilkerson expressed concern that any and every type of criticism of the Israel state was now being masked by accusations of anti-Semitism. AIPAC does not even identify itself as a Jewish organization anymore. This is what I'm saying. I did not, in fact, I may have heard that in passing some time ago, but that is what I'm saying. It doesn't say Jewish. You got to hold these people accountable and push back against these conflations, because that's just, you could call that sorcery or magic or, A equals B. Well, A is B. Either A is B or it's not B. Lobby groups use money to influence. Oh, I'm sorry. Either A is B or it's not B. Lobby groups use money to influence, and that's the problem with our political system. It's worth talking about. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. Lieberman says the response to Omar is partially due with the fact that anti-Semitism is on the rise in a very chaotic moment in American history. American Jews are having a very public conversation about the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. We are on edge. What we're saying here is how the right wing is playing off the legitimate fear that we have in order to divide and conquer the progressive movement. Now, I wish someone would have had that same sentiment, that same feeling, that same evidentiary application as a result of a model from another place. I wish someone would have had that same inkling in the UK, right?
We have the evidence. No one can dispute the evidence. We heard the evidence. We saw the evidence.
That's what we're saying here, is how the right wing's playing off the legitimate fear that they have in order to divide and conquer their progressive movement. AIPAC does not even identify itself as a Jewish organization anymore. That's a quote, it's a block quote from the text. Racism, including anti-Jewish bigotry, Islamophobia, homophobia, and hate crimes against African Americans, have been on the rise in the U.S. since 2016. And by the way, Islamophobia is anti-Semitism. More on that. In 2018, the New York Police Department said there was a 22% increase in anti-Jewish hate crimes over the course of the year. I'd like to see those statistics. Eric Cat, the human rights lawyer, agrees that no one's denying that the trope exists and is used, but says that nothing in what Omar said suggested the trope. She explicitly said AIPAC, which is a self-identified special interest group. See, and we're going to look back at history, because what happens is this person is smeared. Any person that's in that position where they're accused of this is just automatically, immediately smeared in the moment. So just in that moment, it seems as though there's enough of a groundswell and pushback to validate the claim. But as time goes by, the validity of it does not stay, because it's not actually valid. And so the weakness of it makes people forget. If it was truly concern for anti-Semitism, this conversation would have been very different. But watch how nobody will touch it except summarizing what would happen. Yeah, it's all vague. It's not direct. And so we go back and look at the history of what happens, and we say this was all conflation. It was all not real, right? And so that means that when we look back at the annals of history and we see all the things that Ilhan Omar had to go through to simply exist in that space, we're gonna have something. We're gonna have something to revere. No one's going to try and explain what is anti-Semitism, what's not Semitism, what's anti-Zionism, and how the Israel lobby has collapsed these two things in order to advance its agenda. Agreeing with Eric Katz's analysis, Lieberman says that those at the forefront of criticizing Omar are unlikely to have much to say about the Israeli occupation and the rise of anti-Semitism. These people are more interested in supporting Israel, no matter if it's right or wrong, instead of tackling the rise of the white nationalism movement, whose very roots are anti-Semitic. So there we go. We got those. And then there's one more here. This is the one that I think is the most profound. And of course, it's from The Intercept, who, they're very thorough. Let's see, Glenn Greenwald, Brianna Joy Gray, two stalwarts of this program so far, are former employees or are employees now of The Intercept. For years, Republicans made spurious allegations of anti-Semitism against Representative Ilhan Omar on her criticisms of Israel, or for her criticisms of Israel, and Democrats joined in. So this is Akela Lacey, February 2nd, 2023, just a few days ago. Congressional Democrats showed an unusually unified front in support of Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota as she faced attacks from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. As leader of the Republican-controlled House, McCarthy succeeded Thursday in his attempts to strip Omar from her seat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where she's been a vocal critic of the war industrial complex and human rights abuses in which the U.S. has been either a primary actor or a sponsor. On Thursday, the House voted on party lines to remove Omar from the committee by a vote of 218 to 211. Despite congressional Democrats' unity, members of the party bear part of the blame for validating McCarthy's broadsides against Omar in the first place. McCarthy and his colleagues' attacks on Omar go back to 2019. In her first month in Congress, when he called on Representative Nancy Pelosi of California, then the House Speaker, to remove Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee, McCarthy cited the Minnesota representative's criticisms of Israel's human rights abuses and her support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, a Palestinian civil society movement working to build international opposition to Israel's occupation of Palestine. At the time, Representative Lee Zeldin, who was most recently New York's Republican gubernatorial candidate, tweeted that he was disappointed that Omar had also been appointed to a foreign affairs subcommittee and oversight, and accused her of harboring anti-Semitic and anti-Israel hate. Shortly afterward, Democrats began to affirm the message from Republicans in their public remarks and congressional letters, laying the groundwork that would set the stage for their most recent salvo, McCarthy's bid to remove Omar from her committee assignments. Some Democrats, even voting against McCarthy's motion, repeatedly continued to justify his actions and rehashed old allegations against Omar. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries of New York said the vote was about political revenge, but that Omar had clearly made mistakes. We talked about his connection to the Jewish lobby, to the Zionist lobby. When Democrats were in control of the House, they were often attacking her for the same exact thing and throwing her under the bus when Republicans started criticizing her, said Beth Miller, political director of Jewish Voice for Peace Action. They've created an environment that shows that they're willing to attack and throw under the bus any member of their own party who calls for Palestinian human rights. Miller, who said she's relieved that Democrats are now supporting Omar, noted that this fight isn't happening in a vacuum. The Progressive Jewish American Group put out a statement Wednesday connecting the attacks of Omar to attacks on progressives everywhere. The GOP, Miller said, is using its power to attack progressives, and specifically progressive women of color, because they're often progressives who are speaking out for Palestinian rights. The effort to remove Omar based on her criticisms of Israel also comes at a time when Israel's politics are making an unprecedented lurch to the far right, and the Jewish state is ramping up its attack on Palestinians. More than 30 Palestinians have been killed by Israel security forces so far this year. The circus is happening while the Israeli government is escalating an entirely new phase of state violence against Palestinians, Miller said. If you actually look at what the Israeli government is doing right now, the mask is completely off. This is Cori Bush. Efforts to remove Representative Ilhan Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee as part of the perverse backroom deals he made with the Freedom Caucus to secure his gavel. We won't stand for white supremacist efforts to use Islamophobia and racism to silence her. You might as well just go ahead and say, we won't stand for West Asian inferiority efforts to use anti-Semitism and racism to silence her. Just over a month after Omar took office as one of the first Muslim women ever elected to Congress in February 2019, House Democrats swiftly condemned her for a tweet criticizing the relationship between members of Congress and the pro-Israel lobby flagship, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And it's all about the Benjamins, baby, Omar wrote. She clarified that she was referring to AIPAC specifically, and later apologized for the tweet. The next day, conservative New Jersey Democrat Representative Josh Gottheimer and then Representative Elaine Luria wrote a searing letter to House Democrat leadership that didn't mention Omar by name, but noted their concern about anti-Semitic rhetoric in reckless statements like those yesterday. They called on the caucus to not remain silent in the face of hateful speech or actions, and to take a swift action to address the issue by reiterating our rejection of anti-Semitism and our continued support for the state of Israel. Whoa, okay. Let's see what that searing letter was about. Oh my gosh, this is searing. I feel the sear from here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it visible for you. There we go. Somewhat visible. So this is Pelosi, Clyburn, Jeffries, Hoyer, and Lujan. Oh, gosh. What a crew. So we're honored to serve in the most diverse Congress in American history alongside members from many different backgrounds. We also provide the fact that Americans, a lot of this is going to be filler. Jewish members of Congress. Recent insinuations about Jews in support of the Jewish state of Israel are especially concerning because American Jews have long had to deal with such false accusations, oftentimes from the highest levels. See? And then this is, oh my gosh. Today, anti-Semites and white nationalists on the fringes, because you're going to group them. And you make it plural as if one is on one fringe and one is on the other fringe. So anti-Semitism or anti-Semites, could be seen as a comparative statement, wherein anti-Semites are the opposite. Today, anti-Semites and white nationalists on the fringes have embraced new and even more dangerous variations of the dual loyalty charge, which we witnessed this in Charlottesville in 2017. Yes, a little bit. This is just all over the place. We also wish to set the record straight regarding our party's history of support for our ally Israel and for a peaceful solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict based on 2 states for 2 people. This still has the 2 states for 2 people language. Israel is a proud and stable democracy with robust protections for minorities, located in a region prone to authoritarianism and violent extremism, blah, blah, blah. And the boycott, divestment, and sanctions. I was hoping to get maybe some alternate facts that actually were true that they put inside, that they put in the text to prove their case, as if it was preposterous, but it actually was true. That's actually what I was looking for. But those are the ideas about Omar from the perspective of Rogan, and then